Hello and welcome back to another Meme History. My name is Mr. Cannon and I will be your teacher for this lesson. Today, in Meme History, we will be covering the Age of Exploration, a period of history in which European nations began to reach out beyond their borders, typically through the use of the sea. What did the ocean say to the sailor? Nothing. It just waved. Terrible jokes aside, we will be diving right into the vast sea of knowledge, not with the Age of Exploration, but rather at a different point in history. For sadly, to understand this period, we must first understand the scientific revolution. Luckily for us, we have a previous video, shameless plug, I know. This will help us better explain and understand the Renaissance and Reformation if you have not already seen that video. If you have, and you just want a recap, here's the major events that preceded or came up to the scientific revolution. It was again the Renaissance and Reformation. Just as a refresher, as well as another R word for our recap of Renaissance and Reformation, in a nutshell, this is what happened during this period of time. Trade and money.
Here comes the money!
Coming in through the Italian peninsula began to change things in Europe for the better, for the most part. As a starter, we had a formation of a middle class, a group of semi-washed, better educated, and more well-off set of people. These people, using their big brains and money from trade, began to question things around them, namely art, medicine, government, society, life, love, nature, and of course, the church. It was all about thinking and thinking and thinking, and that's what makes the scientific revolution a thing. For you see, people during the Renaissance and Reformation had babbies. These babbies had their own babbies, and they went to school and became smarter. These kids grew up, and by going to school and becoming smarter, they saw, or at least could use, these new fantastic technologies. They were coming up with new technologies. Technologies like better shipbuilding, superior map making, compasses with magnetic abilities, awesome new tools to help exploration, like a sextant, an octane, or even basic understandings of principles like stargazing or celestial mapping. Celestial mapping refers to the use of the sun during exploration. They would use these tools and typically follow a star pattern at night or the sun in the daytime, and use their maps with latitudes and longitudes to figure out their location within these maps. This is all based off of the learning that had been started and continued during the Renaissance and Reformation. Again, watch that video if you are still a little confused as to how these events happened or what they actually meant for world history at this point in time. Either way, with that very, very short recap that would obviously make any professor cringe, we are going to continue. And this brings us back to our original topic, the Age of Exploration. So with these technologies and people starting to think beyond just the tiny world they had known, they had begun exploring, and explorers in general started to become a profession. But why, you might ask? There are three main reasons. What was this yearning for exploration? It starts like this. Firstly, money. Money, gold, it's the first OG, the first original goal. Merchants wanted new, faster, they wanted quicker trade routes to help them supply Europe with goods from the Far East or the Middle East. Secondly, we have glory. During the time of the Renaissance and the Reformation, there was this war, the 100 Years' War. This war was a battle pitted against England and France and several other countries. It was basically like World War I before World War I was actually a thing. The main reason? They were trying to fight over trade. They were trying to fight over territory. These unclaimed lands that people were going to be exploring. It was all fresh for the taking. It's free real estate. And what that means is that anyone can claim it. There's no nation ruling over it. A place for Europeans to expand their power through colonies. And finally, we have God. Yes, even though the Reformation weakened the Roman Catholic Church, many kings and nations were still under their power. And as such, Papa Pope wanted to make sure that he got more subscribers. Obviously, he needed more followers to ensure that he was going to be able to perpetuate or to continue this religion. So now, with these priests or these missionaries along the way for the voyage, it allowed the nations to focus on their main things. Gold, trade, glory, these G's, these things that they were looking for, these things that were going to help promote their nation. Nationalism at this point in time had become a huge thing. Again, if you don't remember it, go check out those videos. Pay attention in class. Google it. One of those things, anything. So getting back to it, Spain is where we're starting on this. Not because they were the first explorers, but because they're the ones that you have most likely heard of. King Ferdinand and Queen Isabel of Spain. You most likely have heard of who they sponsored. They sponsored a dude named Christopher Columbus, who is credited for finding America, even though we all know that that's not entirely true. Fun fact about this: Christopher Columbus, when he first entered into America, landing near the Bahamas, Bermuda Triangle kind of area, the Caribbean, when he landed there, he had called the people, the natives, Indians. Not because they were going to be called Indians, but because he thought he had landed in India. He had made 4 voyages between the New World and Europe, and every time he would call the natives Indians because he refused to believe he hadn't landed in India. So, just saying, he was an explorer, maybe not the most correct one where he landed. He was probably following Apple Maps or something. We can cut him some slack on that. Even still, he was an explorer. He was an explorer bought and paid for by a crown. So he had an affiliation, or he was connected to a state or a European power. And like many of explorers of his time, he went there and went on to conquer a whole bunch of places in America, mainly through the use of brute force, sometimes just sneezing on people, things that were really not cool. Yes, sometimes just by sneezing on people. The common cold in Europe had been a collection of diseases, a collection of sicknesses for so long, for generations. Think about the Black Death, think about the Black Plague. These people had survived sicknesses for generations, for years. And now all of these germs, all of this bacteria that Europeans are living with on a daily basis are being taken into the New World, into the Americas, specifically where he landed in the Caribbeans. These natives did not stand a chance. It was biological warfare at its finest. And it was something that he actually started to do on purpose. There have been historical accounts of people trying to get rid of natives by giving them blankets that were infected by smallpox. It's not a cool thing. Not at all. But you want to know something that is cool? The Prince Henry of Portugal, who loved exploration and sailing so much that he made the bestest school in all of Europe for it. Something that made him a lot of money. And when he was the first main king to set up colonies in the New World, or America, people started to pay attention to that. Seeing this, other big boys jumped on the ship, haha, puns, and began sailing across the ocean to find their own wealth. Portugal was the first main explorer of the New World, unless we're talking like Vikings and stuff, or even Christopher Columbus, but hey, world history, I get it. You've got a lot of different accounts. Either way, yes, while the age of exploration started with this main goal of simply finding faster and easier trade routes with the East or the Middle East, it soon became a mad dash for land in this new world. All the major powers at this time within Europe wanted a piece of America's pie. Of course, this was not without its problems. Simply Google Cortez or James Cook or any of these other explorers to see something interesting, to see something that you won't see in the history books. You see, what happened when explorers landed in the wrong places are things that we're not going to be able to have a chance to talk about. Because despite the fact that Europeans at the time had massive ships with giant pew-pews and loud noises that they could make, there were still large empires within the Americas, particularly in Central and South America. The 3 big ones that we will be talking about, the Aztecs, Incans, and Mayans, all of which had sprawling empires, fantastic agriculture, fantastic architectures, and also human sacrifices. A wonderful topic which we will pick back up on the next Meme History. This has been a very, very brief intro or maybe a review of the Age of Explorations. I hope you have found something at least a little bit helpful. I hope you have a solid day, and until next time, just remember, memes, memes, memes. Why didn't I get a part in the video?